The 2023 NFL Draft has concluded, and in today's video, we are going to be grading the NFC East selections. So we will be starting with the Washington Commanders, and with not just the Commanders, but with every team, we're going to be discussing their game plan heading into the draft, what their thought process was with each of the picks, and how three teams, not including Philly, but how the other three teams can get to the top of the division, and in Philly's case, how they can stay at the top of the division. So we're starting off with the Commanders, who I thought had a good draft, but I thought they had the chance to have a great draft. And Emmanuel Forbes, while I like the player, I don't want to say I was disappointed or that I have a problem with the pick, because those, they're negative connotation words, but it was a good pick. But Christian Gonzalez, I thought, would have been a great pick. And again, I like Emmanuel Forbes as a prospect, but I thought there was a better prospect at the same position on the board. And with Emmanuel, if you guys are not aware, he's 6'1", 166 pounds, so size is immediately going to be a concern for him. And we of course heard the whole thing with Bryce Young with how is he going to be able to survive at the NFL level, but I think the same thing very much applies to Emmanuel Forbes. And for anybody that thinks, once he gets to an NFL facility, this 166 is going to go right up to 190 and he's just going to bulk right up, I don't think it's that simple. And I think at Mississippi State, if they could have got him up to 185 over the past couple of years, they would have. And with Christian Gonzalez there, again, I like the pick of Forbes, but I thought that Gonzalez would have been a better selection. And the same thing applies to Jartavius Martin, their second round pick, where I thought the Commanders should have traded up just 2 spots earlier to go draft Brian Branch, who, again, I don't think it's a hot take to say Brian Branch was a better prospect than Jartavius Martin, but I still like the Forbes and Martin selections. I just thought that Gonzalez and Branch would have been a lot more beneficial to the Commanders secondary than Forbes and Martin will be. Hopefully they prove me wrong. I was a little, again, underwhelmed isn't the right word, but it was good, could have been great. But what I particularly loved about the Commanders draft class was their 3rd through 6th rounds. Interior offensive lineman Ricky Stromberg allowed a grand total of 0 sacks in 2022, and he allowed just 11 pressures all year. And what's particularly key about this for Stromberg is he played at Arkansas. Stromberg didn't play at a Division II level or a Division I FCS where he might play 2 or 3 future NFL players all year. He was playing in the SEC, the big boys of the big boys. And what's key about that for Ricky is he's walking into a division where there are defensive tackles out of the proverbial ass. He's going to play Dexter Lawrence. He's going to play Mozzie Smith, the Cowboys' first round pick. And you can take your choosing of the Eagles' defensive tackles, whether it's Fletcher Cox, whether it's Jalen Carter, or whether it's 2022 first round pick Jordan Davis. So for the Commanders, and really the other teams in that division for that matter too, they need a strong interior offensive line. So love the Ricky Stromberg selection, and Braden Daniels too for that matter, as Braden allowed 0 sacks in 2022 during his time at Utah, and again, it's a good developmental piece. So I like where the Commanders, the heads were first 4 selections, and ultimately KJ Henry as well. With the first 2, it was, hey, we got to stop the other team's opposing receivers. And for the 3rd and 4th selections, it was very much, hey, how are we going to run the ball up the middle on offense? Now, I particularly liked the KJ Henry selection because he had 53 pressures during his final season at Clemson. And when I was watching Myles Murphy and Brian Brzee tape, a lot of the time KJ just popped off. It was like, who is this guy? And I got to watch more of him. And there were a couple games where KJ had 7, 8, or 9 pressures during his final year at Clemson. And the long-term, benefit of this pick is KJ could be a starter for this team next year. Chase Young wasn't extended, and KJ, like we said, 53 pressures in his final year. He's going to be in a beneficial situation with Daron Payne, with Jonathan Allen, and if they extend Montez Sweat, you're looking at a guy that at minimum would be the 4th priority for the opposing offensive line. So this position that KJ is in is honestly pretty good for his future. And Chris Rodriguez, he had 2,200 rushing yards over the past 2 years in the SEC, so I like that pick for them. It's a good developmental back, and he's going to be a running back too at the next level. So all around, the Commanders had a solid draft, and we give them a B draft grade. Now, we are heading to Dallas and to discuss America's team. And guys, I did not particularly like the Cowboys draft class. I just thought it was underwhelming in a lot of areas. I like Mazi Smith as a prospect, don't love him. Hopefully he develops. ESPN had him personally at 38th overall. He's a 6'3", he's right around 330 pounds, and like we said, hopefully he develops into that. But aside from the Mazi Smith pick and eventually getting down to Deuce Vaughn, who will be a backup running back at the NFL level, there wasn't a lot for me that wowed me. Luke Schoonmaker's going to be a 25-year-old rookie tight end. I didn't like the value with him late in the second round. I thought he was a third-round pick. Tucker Kraft was also on the board at this point in time. So I like the Cowboys drafting a tight end. I did not like the tight end they drafted in this situation. I know it was an older draft class because of the COVID, implications and everything with COVID years, with medical redshirt years and everything else. So this was probably one of the older classes that we'll ever see. But to draft a 25-year-old tight end in the second round, who, again, I didn't value that highly, I didn't think was that good of a prospect, to me was just a bad pick. And DeMarvion Overshown, I like the player. Hopefully he can slide right into that J-Ron Curse role. Now, I will say for DeMarvion's future that if anybody can, get the best out of him, it's going to be Dan Quinn. But this is a developmental pick in the third round. And by the way, at this point in time, Darnell Washington was still on the board. Granted, Darnell fell to a medical reason, and when they were selecting Luke Schoonmaker, they didn't think that Darnell would be there over a round later. But DeMarvion Overshown as a project pick in the third round, to me, was not a great pick. Viliami Fehoko, again, I didn't think he was the 125th best player in the class. I thought he was, a mid-6th round prospect. They take him in the 4th. Asim Richards is okay. Hopefully he develops into something, but we're grasping for a 5th round pick to be a good player. That's where we are with this draft class. I was pretty underwhelmed. I thought Mazi Smith was okay. Deuce Vaughn, good developmental back, good RB2, but I gave this draft a C. I thought there were better drafts out there, and Mazi Smith and Deuce Vaughn, maybe DeMarvion Overshown, and again, a 25-year-old Luke Schoonmaker. Hopefully these guys prove me wrong, but I thought Dallas kind of whiffed in this draft. Now, from Dallas and from the Lone Star State, we head to the New York Football Giants, who, honestly, guys, I was really impressed with their draft class. And what's particularly key to remember here with the Giants is they went from pick 73 to 172 without a draft pick. They went 99 whole spots without a selection, yet they still had 4, arguably 5 impact players with their picks. Deonte Banks is a Wink Martindale corner. He is the Wink Martindale prototype to a T. And if Sauce Gardner would have been available for them at 5 last year, they would have drafted him. But Deonte, while he's, and to be fair, not a lot of people are going to be Sauce. He can play that man-to-man corner. Hey, we need you to lock up CD on this 3rd and 4, critical play in the game. All right, coach, I got it. Put me out there on an island. That's the type of player Deonte Banks is going to be. So I like that selection for them. And the same thing for the Giants that the Commanders had with the selection of Emmanuel Forbes. That applies to them as well. We have to stop CD Lamb, Devonta Smith, and A.J. Brown. Now, John Michael Schmitz, love that pick. Interior offensive lineman from Minnesota. Will be a plug-and-play starter from day one. And also like the Jalen Hyatt selection too. Not just because he's, a burner, but with Hyatt, you always have to account for him on the field. And if you don't, see his 6-catch, 207-yard, 5-touchdown performance against Alabama, for example. So with Jalen Hyatt on the field, you almost have defenses immediately into a 2-high safety every single time, which in turn will benefit both Saquon Barkley and 5th-round running back Eric Gray, because having the 2 safeties in the back of the defense obviously limits how many guys they can put in the box at one time. So I love the Jalen Hyatt selection, not just for the player he is, but for how much he impacts the offense at one time. So honestly, guys, all things considered, I think the Giants got 3 starters, and with the future of Saquon Barkley in question, they might have 4 starters with Eric Gray, and even had a sleeper of a 7th-round pick in Javarius Owens. So all things considered, I gave the Giants an A-. Now, heading down to southeastern PA, we go to discuss the Philadelphia Eagles. And guys, this was a hell of a draft class. Howie Roseman gets a lot of credit as a GM, and rightfully so. Now, there were a couple years ago where a lot of Eagles fans wanted Howie to be fired, and I can honestly say, as a fan of another team in the NFC, I wish Howie would have been fired, because what he's done over the past few years has been nothing short of phenomenal. Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Keely Ringo, all from one of the best college defenses of all time. And if that's not enough, they drafted Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis last year. Jalen Carter, great player, great situation for him to walk into. Obviously, that's going to be the big thing with Jalen Carter. You know, can he develop? Can teams get the most out of him? And for Jalen, he's walking into a situation where he already knows a lot of guys. He knows Nolan, he knows Keely Ringo, Jordan Davis, and not only does he know those guys and is probably familiar and comfortable with those guys, he's also into a situation with good veterans like Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox, and on the offensive side of the ball, Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson. And they've developed a winning culture. So if the Eagles can't get the most out of Jalen Carter, then I really don't know who would. Also, by the way, Tyler Steen hasn't got a lot of love for the Eagles selections. I thought he was a pretty underrated pick, and there's a chance that he becomes a starting guard for them. Sidney Brown, another underrated pick. Obviously, the Georgia guys got a lot of the love, and rightfully so, by the way. But Tanner McKee, I was not a fan of, but for Philly to get him all the way in the 6th round, and by the way, me not being a fan of Tanner McKee was when people were mocking him in the late 1st round and trying to slide him into mocks. I did not think Tanner McKee was even close to a 1st-round quarterback, but for the Eagles to get him as a 6th-round pick and to back up Jalen Hurts, I like the value there. And if you're going to have him for 4 years as a backup to Jalen Hurts, so like the value. And also loved Moro Ajomo. I thought he was a top 125 player, really at worst, and they got him late in the 7th round. So I don't think you can actually look at the Eagles draft class and definitively say, hey, that's an awful pick. You can certainly say that about a lot of other teams, but maybe you could say that about Jalen if he doesn't work out. But for the Eagles, guys, I would be very, very surprised if they don't repeat as NFC East champions. I mean, this roster is absolutely loaded, and they added the best defensive tackle prospect in the past 10 years, and that's already after adding his college teammate just 1 year before in Jordan Davis, who had a limited role in his rookie season, due both an injury, due both to signing veterans as well. So, guys, the Eagles draft class, we didn't give out many of these, and you can probably guess what the grade is, but not surprisingly, I mean, guys, they killed it. It's an A+ draft grade. I don't know, the biggest thing for the Eagles, where's a bad pick? You look at their class, where is a bad pick? And truthfully, I can't find one. So that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it would both mean the world and be very much appreciated. The Patreon and Twitter links are in the description if you'd like to support the channel. And until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.